Alright, what's going on everyone? Today we're going to look at another World Championship winning deck in Magic the Gathering's history, and this time it is the deck that won in 2012. That is Jund. Modern Jund. That's right, it was a modern deck, and also it's not technically a World Championship deck because things got a little bit complicated here. You see, the modern format was created in 2011, and in 2012, Wizards of the Coast technically ended the World Championship and replaced it with the Player Championship, and that Player Championship featured the new modern format instead of the traditional standard format. The change lasted a single year, as in 2012, Wizards of the Coast reverted back to the World Championship title and made standard the feature format. Anyway, so technically we're looking at a Player Championship winning deck, but it was functionally a World Championship. It replaced the World Championship basically, whatever. Right, so standard at the time was technically composed of Skarza Mirrodin, Innistrad, as well as M12 and M13, but none of that is relevant because the tournament wasn't standard. Also, the tournament would take place in Seattle, Washington, and the deck would be piloted by Yuuya Watanabe. So the Jund deck of 2012 is a little bit different from the Jund we know today, but many of the fundamentals are the same. To start off with, it played Thoughtseize and Inquisition of Kozilek, the typical hand disruption package that you're probably familiar with if you've ever played Modern. The point of these cards is to strip the opponent's hand away of key pieces they need to make their deck function. After that, it played Lightning Bolt, Terminate, and Maelstrom Pulse because at the time spot removal was really good in Modern. These basically work the same way as the previous screen. You're trading one of your cards for one of your opponent's cards, and you're basically looking to blow up the things that your opponent needs to win the game. So pretty simple, you strip stuff out of your opponent's hand, and the things they play you make not exist anymore. The deck also played Jund Charm, something the deck hasn't played in a long time. It can exile an entire graveyard against decks that care about that. It can deal 2 damage to every creature, so it's a board wipe against aggro decks, and then it can give a creature 2+1/+1 counters if you've stabilized and want to go on the offensive. It's a pretty decent versatile card that is just a little bit slow by today's standards. After that, it played Liliana of the Veil and Tarmogoyf, the infamous finishers in Jund that have been there since the beginning. Liliana takes over the game by draining everyone's hand and then wiping the board, and the Tarmogoyf can come into play and be a massive threat because of all the cards in the graveyard. They say Tarmogoyf is Liliana's best friend, and they've been friends for a very long time. The deck also played mid-rangey cards in the form of Kitchen Finks and Bloodbraid Elf. The point of these is to generate card advantage. The Kitchen Finks is a 3/2 that gains 2 life when it enters the battlefield, and it has Persist, so it can trade with a creature and generate more life, and providing another body to trade for a second time, allowing you to 2-for-1 the opponent while also going up in life. Bloodbraid Elf is a 3/2 with haste and cascades, so you've seen some of the cards you can hit. You can hit, Lightning Bolts and Lilianas and Jund Charms and all that stuff, and that can be pretty explosive. And even just playing a Bloodbraid Elf and cascading into a Kitchen Finks is, that's a lot of value. You play one creature, you get another creature for free, and that creature can also 2-for-1, which is pretty nice. So yeah, just a very mid-rangey, value-based package from 2012. And then the deck played Dark Confidant, of course, a 2-mana 2/1 that lets you draw an extra card every turn, but you lose life based on that card's converted mana cost. There's nothing super expensive in this deck, so this is just another value generator, and it breaks the symmetry of Liliana of the Veil by allowing you to draw more cards than your opponent, as well as just simply allowing you to draw more answers than your opponent can draw threats. This deck is really good at getting people into top deck mode. That's what Jund is really good at, that's what it does. And then once you get into top deck mode, you get to just draw more cards. If your opponent finally hits a threat, maybe you've drawn 2 or 3 answers since then, and that's how this deck takes over and wins the game most of the time, while it's beating away with just a giant Tarmogoyf, of course. And that's Jund. Pretty typical Jund. Taking a quick look at the mana base, it had Verdant Catacombs and Marsh Flats, which are fetch lands that need to be reprinted because they're too expensive. Those could fetch up Blood Crypt, Stomping Grounds, and Overgrown Tomb, which also need to be printed more because they are also too expensive, though less expensive than the fetch lands, that's for sure. The deck also played Blackcleave Cliffs and Twilight Mire, both of which need to be reprinted because they're too expensive. And then finally we have Treetop Village and Raging Ravine, which are lands that animate into creatures $50, and also they aren't too expensive, but if Wizards of the Coast is going to reprint needed lands in Modern, it will probably be these, because why would you reprint fetch lands? How ridiculous. Obviously we need a Treetop Village reprint, and not a Verdant Catacombs reprint. Yeah, logic. I'm not bitter. Not at all. Oh, and it also had some basic lands, but seriously, reprint the fetch lands. And then taking a quick look at the sideboard, as always, we won't go too in-depth here as that requires an understanding of the entire metagame, but the deck played extra copies of Thoughtseize and Jund Charm so it could change up those ratios if needed. It also had Nihil Spell Bombs and Grafdigger's Cages, 4 Graveyards, Ancient Grudge and Seal of Primordium, could blow up artifacts and enchantments, and then Pyroclasm and Olivia Waldarin function as pseudo board sweepers, and then finally the deck had Ravenous Baloth and Batterskull as ways to gain life against, you know, the more aggro decks and burn and whatnot. And that's the deck. It's kind of the same Jund we know and love, but also a little bit antiquated. The deck is fundamentally the same, and yet it's also much less powerful than today's version of Jund. It really shows how much power has been injected into Modern since 2012. And yeah, Jund, a classic deck in Modern and a sort of world champion of 2012. So there you go. Now you're a little bit more familiar with Magic the Gathering's history and another classic deck from years past. If you like this video and want to see more like it, I have an entire playlist dedicated to these world champion decks, and you can find a link to it in the description below. Also consider subscribing, as there will surely be more to come in the future. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.